know, so let's go, cuz. So what? I don't care. I'm number one, the uno, I like punk. Bring all the suckers, cause all of them I'll stomp. Won't neglect, but I will protect. All of my followers, cause all I want is respect. I'm not a boxer, but the man who rocks her. A slick brother that can easy out fox her. Cause I'm Rob, the last name basis. And over mic, I'm known to be the freshest. So let's start, it shouldn't be too hard. I'm not a sucker, so I don't need a bodyguard. I won't flex, wear bulletproof vests. Don't smoke Buddha, can't stand sex, yes. That the bass is in. I'm kinda stingy, that's why I don't wanna win. A funky rhyme to a foe or a good friend. Now listen up, cause I want you to comprehend. Cause I'm the leader, the man, superior. I take curia and then you get wearier. So just sit, my rhymes are not counterfeit. The record sells, which makes this one a hit. It won't hurt to listen to Red Alert. Take off the shirt, make sure I don't hit the dirt. I like the kids, the guys, the girls. I won't get done cause this is raw-based world. I'm on a mission, you better just listen to my rhymes cause I'm all about dissing cause you get weary, don't cheer me, just hear me out, cause I got the clout, shout. Before I turn the party out, I won't stutter, project my voice, speak clearly, so you can be my choice on stage, or on record, go to the whiz and select it, take it off the rack and just back, put it back. I like the Whopper, the Big Mac, if you want static, so let's go, so, throw up your hands, go for what you know, bro, I got an ego, yo, talking to me, no, oh, cause Robert's in the front, easy rockers on the back up. We're not soft, so you better just slack up. Cause I'm cool, calm, just like a breeze. Rock the mic with the help of Easy Rock. On the set, the music play. Only cuts the records that I say. It takes two to make a thing go right. It takes two to make it out of sight. It takes two to make a thing go right. It takes two to make it out of sight. Now, when I count to three, I want you to get busy. You ready now? 1, 2, 3, get loose now.
Log on to urbanbroadcastmedia.com and check out the many services Urban Broadcast Media provides. Whether it's social media, video production, radio broadcasting, or audio recording, we got you covered.
Truth and righteousness will awaken us. Teach us the truth. Truth and righteousness will awaken us. Teach us the truth. Teach us the truth. Teach us the truth. Teach us the truth. Truth and righteousness will awaken us. Teach us the truth. Truth and righteousness will awaken us. Teach us the truth. And he's to deliver that message of truth and righteousness to the 20 million American so-called Negroes, which means he's to teach us the truth, which will awaken us, and then show us how to live a life of righteousness, which will automatically qualify us for recognition as human beings by all other righteous human beings here on this earth. Truth and righteousness will awaken us. Teach us the truth, the truth, the truth, the truth.
Now, one other question, with reference to what Mr. Hurlbut asked you a little bit
Peace,
ago.
power, and love, and welcome
you
to
took a very moderate
Xcavate
position
with
of,
D and Michael X.
Wanting independence.
I am
without
Michael X,
having
one
any
half
hatred
of our
for the
hosting
whites.
duo.
Is that-
And this is
do I
Diallo
understand that
Kenyatta.
correctly?
Hatred is not involved in it whatsoever.
And we welcome you all to the show.
Truth.
We are excited to be back. We're broadcasting live from Bronzeville, Chicago. I'm excited to be back in business here. It's been some time since we've addressed our viewers, or now listeners. We've put the video show to the side for a moment, and we've decided to focus on radio, and I'm excited about it. How are you feeling, Diallo?
I'm good. I think this is a better format, so I can come in my house shoes and robe and my cup of tea and don't have to worry about looking nice for the ladies.
I think that's fitting. That makes a lot of sense. All right, so we are gonna open up the show, our first show, discussing one of the topics that is very, very hot in the news currently, and that is the Mike Brown story. Xcavate, with Xcavate, we intend to dig deeper into the story, a little bit deeper than you get in mainstream news, a little bit deeper than you get in most of the conversations that you find on the streets, and so let's do that. You've been paying attention to the story, I'm certain. Do you have some opinions that are right at the top of your mind?
Well, I might have to offend some people, if that's okay. What's stands out the most about the Mike Brown story is just about how typical of a story it is. I mean, this is the prototypical atrocity reaction and back to business as usual with some minor payouts and some people trying to get some additional exposure for their own causes. We've been doing this same dance with the bureaucracies and systems of oppression for the last 100+ years. I don't even know if anyone could say that they were surprised at the Mike Brown murder, the state or police official response, and then the black community's reactions, and then here come the prototypical black leaders and all the rhetoric. It's just everything. I could have wrote the script for this before it happened, and I know there's not a person who can tell me that they don't expect this to happen again and maybe again. You know, how many more before we are willing to make some fundamental changes? If not, if we can't change the system, we can make some fundamental changes in how we interact or the relationship we have with the systems of oppression.
That is the question. The question is, what are the fundamental changes that need to be made? When you talk about the song and dance, I imagine you're talking about the immediate emotional response, the protesting in the streets that devolved into riots in some instances. You're talking about the parents and the family getting on the news, crying. You're talking about the so-called black leaders getting on the news and expressing the opinion of black people per se across the nation. These are all measures that I would imagine are a required first response. Are you saying that we should not respond in that way at all? And if not, then how do we respond?
Well, I don't want to play semantics, but I actually went to Ferguson, and many of the boarded up stores from the so-called riots were preventatively boarded up. They weren't damaged. So a lot of what they show in the news reels or in the photographs is not riot materials, but people prepping for riots that never occurred. And we don't call reactions to state-sponsored atrocities riots. We call them rebellions. And so, when people go outside the law, when the official law is acting in a manner that's counter to their basic human rights and dignity, that's a rebellion. A riot would actually be when, people drink too much beer after a hockey game and tear up the city. That's a riot. But what happened in Ferguson was a rebellion. And I think
to a certain extent. I mean, we did have clear reports and clear video evidence of some in our community
of rebellion,
great regret, taking the opportunity
to rebel.
Rebelling against some black-owned businesses. There are black-owned business owners who were appealing to the wider community to stop what they call rioting.
Right, but the black-owned business owners should have got out there and started, busting up windows too. It's a rebellion. You can't, put parameters on that type of visceral response. I mean, that's what's happened. I've been a store or a business owner and had my window pane broken out. You call the insurance company, they send out a person to repair it. You don't tell your people, hey, don't. That it was a rebellion regardless. And when the people move, you get with them or get out of the way. But aside from that, I think until we make some internal changes, some fundamental changes, if you're truly hurt or moved by the Mike Brown atrocity, you have to say, I'm going to change some internal things. I'm going to change the way I eat, the way I spend, the way I relate to people, my relatives, my family, my community, the way I'm going to relate to the institutions for the rest of my life. You can't just appeal to those institutions and to correct themselves, because that's already seen as being futile and it's unprofitable. So until we as a people say we're going to have to fundamentally change our behaviors, and Amos Wilson told us that the system changes when we decide to change our behaviors. That's what changes the system, not based on our appeals and protests, but based on when we made a decision to say, hey, we ain't sitting on the back of the bus, we ain't swinging from trees, and we ain't accepting abuse without some form of retaliation. So, and we decided that internally and on our own. And when we make those decisions, the system makes the necessary adjustments in response to our changing our behavior.
I want to get into how we go about making that decision as a community, as a whole. But first, let's go ahead and play some music. One of the things that I'm really excited about with the radio format is the opportunity to play music that is relevant to our times. And we certainly will take the opportunity to do that. We start with a artist that is phenomenal in my books, Oddisee with That Wheel.
Before I knew what I was doing, I was trying to do something. That's the definition. Listen of and know it all. Young and hard-headed, hardly headed in directions I intended. Where I ended was deaded like no exit except the interest. Now I'm making my interest as if I'm hopping the fences. Thinking I'm big pimpin', when really I'm just an infant. Adolescent at best. Had a lesson in living, given to me the stress, then heard it with the vision. Wool over my eyes, blue say it's the sky, gray is the true color, but who say if the why? So do that make me pessimistic if I feel I'm right? But the best of this shit, niggas say I'm cool, shorty say I'm they lipstick. On the tip of the tongue is my lyrics, they whispering. Let's make it apply, right place in the time, sight space in the vibe, it's right for lace in the rhyme. Might say I'm the prime, light laced in the line, bittersweet is the beating together, taste is divine. Lemonade in my shine, dimmer shade in my blind. Spots in my mirror, forward never rewind. Plots vividly clear, not saying that I'm knowing just what I'm doing, but got faith in my grind, so stop haters, you lying. If you're saying you get it, how I get it. Swab test you feel, can't spit it, how I spit it, nah.
One of these days, maybe I hope to be whatever that means, it's all that I hope to be. One of these days, maybe I hope to be.
They saying, oh, bring that real shit, something you can feel shit. Numb to that dumb it down, spun overkill shit. Run over hill shit, dated like the fifth wheel. Hate it when they made it, but they praise it just to get deals. Me, never that, man, that's never happened.
We're back. So we left off talking about the question of how do we bring about internal change versus the public appeals and the protests that seem so effective. You know, I value your opinion greatly. I've made that clear on a number of different occasions because of all of the study that you've put into the fight for African liberation and the work that you've put in over the decades. And so, you know, I really lean on your opinion, and I'm very interested to hear how you think we can go about changing course.
Well, first of all we have to do, we have to advance our tactics, and we have to make sure that our efforts are married to what's going on a global scale, because our situation and our oppression is not national. It's not a local thing. It's a global thing. What happens in a little suburb of St. Louis in Missouri in the middle America is tied to Israel. The tactics and many of the methods deployed against our people there were developed in Israel.
But it's interesting. I must say that in our pre-production of this show, one of the questions I brought up to you is whether or not we should spend some time talking about Israel, whether or not we should spend some time talking about the Western onslaught into Ukraine, and you thought that it wouldn't be relevant. So where really do you stand on that?
Well, I didn't say it would be relevant if we could discuss it in the context of our localized problems. So if we could, you know, look inward and then grow outward from there. But to talk about them in isolation, I think would not really be as grab the public's attention as much as tying them in. But I was just saying that to say that if we looked at you have to look at what works. And many people don't understand that civil rights, that we want our civil rights not just because we took some water hoses and police dog attacks and we gathered in Washington and sang some songs. If you look at the international aspect of it, the U.S. had a serious PR problem where they were going up against socialism and communism, and they were telling the nations of the world, capitalism is the future. Look to the West as an example on how to develop your new nations. And but they were like, look at how you treat the people within your borders that look like us. So that was a large aspect of the civil rights movement. Whereas now we live in a nation that is the sole superpower. There's no one competing against the ideas. Everyone says it's capitalism, not even traditional capitalism, but finance capitalism governs all the world. And there's no other power to appeal to. So the U.S. doesn't have that PR problem. And that's why they're able to do things that they weren't able to do when there was a bipolar world of communist versus capitalist, or the West versus the East, where they couldn't just go into Afghanistan and Libya and Iraq. They couldn't just do anything because there was another nuclear superpower to check them. So now that we're operating within that environment, we have to amend our tactics. We're protesting and letting the world see what's going on and telling the world about how we're suffering. It doesn't really matter anymore.
What matters? Well, what do we do? I mean, you know, I see on the root.com headline story, 4 dead unarmed men and the police, what you need to know. We're talking about Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Ezell Ford, John Crawford III. All died after confrontations with the police, and their deaths are still shrouded in mystery, even as the black community reels from the losses. How do we stop reeling, and what action do we take?
Well, number one, there's no mystery. I mean, a number of those deaths were caught on tape. There's no mystery behind their loss. There's no mystery behind the motivation of the murderous policemen who murdered these men. There's no mystery there. It's pretty obvious. Like I said, it's an atrocity, but at this point, it's like out of Nazi. They said, you know, 1 dead person is a tragedy, but 1 million dead is a statistic. So right now, these are pretty much statistics. And then when you tie those on with the so-called black-on-black violent deaths, I mean, black death is pretty much a standard in this country. It's the expectation.
I don't hear you answering the question. And it leads me to suggest my opinion, which is the notion that we cannot defend ourselves here. When
we could absolutely defend ourselves.
Have we ever been able to do it?
Yes, we've done it several times, extremely successfully.
When you look at Tulsa, when you look at Rosewood, when you look
you can go all the way back to the time of our chattel enslavement, where there were free spaces for us. There were spaces, the Seminoles, the people. Well, for the United States and Western culture operates off of the MAD principle, which stands for mutually assured destruction.
Agreed.
And the only way to get the system to the negotiating table is to show that you're willing and capable of doing equal or greater damage to them as they can do to you. And so when you get to that mad state of being, that's when you can start to negotiate and get reforms and policies.
We've never been willing to do the sort of damage
that's not true.
That has been done.
We've burned down over 200 cities in this country in the 60s. In the post-Civil War era, there was great fear that the recently emancipated Africans who had, especially those who had fought in the war, could rise up and unite with many of the United States enemies and overthrow or disrupt and cause another breakage in the United States. If you look at the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and the magnificent reforms that we had, and if you look at the gains that we had in the Reconstruction era, and then when that threat was resolved, and the problem is we always fight them to the table, and like Dale Jones says, our oppressor is more deadly at the negotiating table than he is on the battlefield. We often win the wars, but we lose the peace. The problem is our follow through. We rose up and burned down over 200 cities, brought the economic and political and cultural centers of this country to a standstill.
So do we need cities to burn again? Is that the solution?
No, it's not
because
the solution
that is still
unto
the
itself.
Question that I'm pondering here, and that is the question. That is the answer that I'm hoping we might be able to suggest to our listeners is where do we go from here?
Well, where we need to go from here is that we need to basically employ the revolutionary Pan-Africanist model. We are only 13% and shrinking population of the U.S. We don't have the political, economic, or the military power as quote-unquote African Americans to really bring any type of to force any type of negotiation or impose any policies or restraints on this government. So the only way we can do this is to use our historical and cultural ties to the African continent, the Caribbean, Central and Latin America, and even Western Europe, areas like Brixton and and the black population in Canada, and we all begin to coordinate our efforts. So if we don't internationalize this struggle, if we don't coordinate and pool our resources, then there really is no hope. I mean, this is from a raw, strategic standpoint. We're not in a good negotiating positions, but also that's on a national scale. South Chicago, African population could own the economy and create an economic enclave right here in South Chicago. Places like certain areas in Texas, Atlanta, New York for the time being, even areas such as the Bay Areas where we have population concentration, if we properly coordinated our efforts and our resources. But the problem is the cost of freedom. We don't want to pay that cost because it would cost us too much social and it basically we can't have as much fun and do that work.
Well, J. Cole says something about being free. Let us listen here to a dedication he made to Mike Brown and the developments in Ferguson. J. Cole, be free.
And I'm in the now, and it don't take no X-ray to see right through my smile. I know I'll be on the go, and it ain't no drink out there that can numb my soul. Oh no, all we wanna do is take the chains off. All we wanna do is break the chains off, man. All we wanna do is be free. All we want to do is be free. All we want to do is take the chains off. All we want to do is break the chains off. All we want to do is be free. All we want to do is be free. Can you tell me why? Every time I step outside, I see my niggas die. Oh, I'm letting you know that it ain't no gun they make that can kill my soul. Oh no. Say, all we want to do is take the chains off. All we want to do is take the chains off. All we want to do is be free. All we want to do is be free. All we want to do is take the chains off. All we want to do is break the chains off. All we want to do is be free. All we want to do is be free.
So now it's like the officer's pulling him inside the car. He's trying to pull away. And at no time the officer said that he was was going to do anything until he pulled out his weapon. His weapon was drawn, and he said, "I'll shoot you, or I'm going to shoot." And in the same moment, the first shot went off. And we looked at him. He was shot, and there was blood coming from him. And we took off running.
Are we all alone, fighting on our own? Please give me a chance. I don't wanna dance. Something's got me down. I will stand my ground. Don't just stand around. Don't just stand around.
As we took off running, I ducked and hid for my life because I was fearing for my life. And I hid by the first car that I saw. My friend, he kept running, and he told me to keep running because he feared for me too. So as he was running, the officer was trying to get out of the car, and once he got out the car, he pursued my friend, but his weapon was drawn. Now, he didn't see any weapon drawn at him or anything like that, us going for no weapon. His weapon was already drawn when he got out the car. He shot again, and once my friend felt that shot, he turned around and he put his hands in the earth, and he started to get down, but the officer still approached with his weapon drawn, and he fired several more shots, and my friend died.
All we wanna do is take the chains off. All we wanna do is break the chains off. Yeah. All we wanna do is be free. All we wanna do is be free. All we wanna do is take the chains off. All we wanna do is break the chains off.
UBN Talk by downloading the Free Streams radio app and searching UBN Talk. Now back to the best R&B and hip hop from the past 30 years. We are UBN JAMZ.
So we are concerned with that social phenomenon. We are concerned with that exploitation. We are concerned with the oppression that black people and all other people The thing is, we have the ability to defend it.
Arm raised, fist tight, nigga. Militant man, say goodbye to the polite nigga. Go ahead, hate on me, make my plight bigger. Or you can roll with me and make this fight bigger. We mashing on, hold on to your boots. I'm getting back to black, climbing through my roots from the soil to the pole. Rags the riches, right? You know how this story go. Now I'm toe to toe with the heartless. I rub shoulders with bosses, no shows, no losses, right? So from the bottom to the top's expected, and no new homies, that's for the record. For y'all that thought you ran with me, respected to check it. So when I enter, hit the exits. This your party, right? While I'm dancing reckless, letting it go tonight. They say I'm acting like I lost my mind. Nope, just woke up this morning feeling like a new man. Looking in the mirror like, where the hell you been when you said
While I'm freedom fighting, then I'm darling, stand there and just watch us bleed. Can understand it? While I'm freedom fighting, then I'm darling,
we're back live from Bronzeville Chicago. This is UBN JAMZ. You're listening to Xcavate with D and Michael X. And we want to talk a little bit about the solutions. We left off, D, with the question of where do we go from here? What are some of the solutions that we can bring to the table? I know we've had some talk, and we've talked about ethnic enclaves. We've talked about cooperative economics. We've talked about some of the solutions that we can bring to bear. I'd love to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on this subject.
Okay, let's just run down the list of some of the most immediate and basic things. You already mentioned ethnic enclaves, cooperative economics, block voting, issue voting, and lobbying, internal reparations, and a freedom tax. I've come up with this concept called the Holiday Divestment Fund to replace boycotting, which no longer works because the corporations are international. And so if we boycott here, they'll just pump up in India or in Western Europe. So, but a holiday divestment fund is something that we are not asking anyone for anything, but we're servicing ourselves. Targeted education and industry acquisitions, which is basically niche economics, where you decide on a niche. Like in this country, the Asians targeted the tech sector, and they train up their youth to target the tech sector. Indians target medical professions, And even though Indians make up, about 7% of U.S. population, they're over 35% of the medical doctors. It's insane numbers. And then ideological education over academic education, and ideological education guiding academic education, where we've done the opposite. So those aren't even revolutionary concepts. These are basic practices of any identifiable racial or ethnic group. It's just we've been so oppressed and we've been under such relentless attack, we've forgotten the very, very necessary art of statecraft. This is basic statecraft that we need to engage in. This isn't even touching on the revolution. This is setting us up to conduct Pan-African revolution or to secure liberation.
Do you see that sort of statecraft taking place within the community of African people, or more specifically within the African diaspora? You've been involved in a couple, or maybe more than a couple, of organizations that have taken up the cause of African liberation. Where do you see these sort of solutions in effect?
I don't see them in a way that satisfy me taking place within the United States. Our so-called leadership, or what they're more accurately called leading blacks by some, the leading blacks are actually, their very legitimacy is based on preventing or discouraging the black community from engaging in statecraft. So because we've been led to think that our salvation is based on making appeals to the dominant system, and when the system doesn't respond, we make more aggressive appeals. That's pretty much it. You know, and whether that appeal is through the voting, or that appeal is through marching in the streets and protests, or that appeal is made through rioting, we're basically asking someone else to make adjustments and make place for us instead of us creating a place for ourselves.
I see, but when you talk about making a place for yourself, it's just so hard. I mean, even you and I, we've spent some time, maybe the last 2-3 years, attempting to organize in Bronzeville.
It's not hard if you're organized. It's impossible if you're unorganized. One E-Rock from the Coon once said, if everybody in the hood had a PhD, they say that doctor cooked that burger hella good for me, because with all the skills and resources, we could produce Oprah Winfrey billionaires and brilliant people and highly technically trained individuals coming out of the MIT or the best training institutions and educational institutions in the Western world. But if we don't have an organization, if we don't have a collective goal, if we don't have a unifying ideology, all that'll go to waste. We have Africans starving on the most fertile land in the world. We have Africans living in poverty and some of the rich and most mineral-rich resources in the world. We have Africans with some of the best talent in the world, and we make the least amount of money off of entertainment. We have the best athletes in the world, and we have the least amount of control over the sports industry and the supportive industries, from manufacturing basketballs to sneakers. So we've been depending on our raw talent. We've been trying to demonstrate our humanity and our loyalty and our patriotism to this nation so that they will allow us to freely and openly be citizens of this nation. But it's a futile task that after a century of them demonstrating to us that that's not going to happen, and we think, and just like we can even become president of their nation and serve their interests and drop bombs where they want us to and make reforms where they wanted to in their economy, and they still hate us. So until we start to internalize our mission, internalize our objectives, and internally utilize our talents, labor, resources, and power for our own agenda, we don't even have an agenda, let alone we can't even say, well, how close are we to reaching the black agenda, because there's no agreed upon agenda for us.
I see. Well, there is one group that I had the opportunity this week to work with, to actually protest with, the Black Youth Project. The group traveled and marched down 35th Street to the Chicago Police headquarters in order to lift up their voices against the criminalization of black males, specifically the disproportionate number of marijuana arrests. I think something like 74% of drug arrests or marijuana-related arrests in the city involve black men. That is an organization that's doing some good work. I wanted to give them a shout. What do you think about those efforts?
See, okay. I'm just going
to I just want to give you the bait.
Let me quote. Well, I won't say what I think. Let me just quote one of our great ancestors.
I think we said from the start that we're going to be very transparent here and honest and share our
okay.
Yeah.
I'm still going to quote the ancestors. So y'all have issue with him if you don't like it. He said marching ain't nothing but a waste of shoe leather. Now, again, just with the marijuana situation,
I have to disagree. Let me tell you something. Okay. I was marching with the group, and there were a number. I spent a lot of time in Bronzeville on 35th Street, and there are a lot of young men that have not, with their own eyes, seen that sort of stand, especially against the police. There were young brothers who joined the march, which was outstanding. And I think that sort of, even if it's in a very small way, politicization of young black youth is good. You're saying there's no value in having young people stand up and recognize that they have...
It's 2014, man. It's 2014. The year 2014. And we've been marching for over a century. Now, let me tell you something. In this city, in this system, one thing you can do, guaranteed to make more immediate change, is to make something that was once profitable unprofitable. So if you want to change marching, then what are you appealing to when you march? You think they didn't know? And this is the thing. We march against things that white folks already knew they was doing before we marched against it. They know they doing wrong. They know that's in proportion. They keep those statistics. They go over those statistics. They hire the statisticians to comb over those statistics. So they already knew, and they know we don't like it. But let me just say this. When you have a case brought against, in the case of criminalization, over 97% of all people plead their cases out instead of taking them to trial because they negotiate lesser sentences with the prosecutor. If every single black person arrested said, we're taking it to trial, we would bring the wheels of quote-unquote justice to a complete standstill. If we sat down as an agenda, as a community, and said, listen, no more pleading out any more of these cases. I don't care if it's a parking ticket. I don't care if it's a quadruple homicide. No more pleading out of these cases, because they economically and just from a basic manpower standpoint, they could not make all these arrests if just a few of us stood up and say, no more, we're not playing this game anymore. If you're going to arrest me, you're going to have to prove my guilt, and I'm going to take it through and fight it to the very end. Then we have to mobilize the lawyers, mobilize the economic resources to keep our people out of jail. And then it's no longer profitable. But the way we deal with things now, let them commit the atrocities. We protest against the atrocities. They give us some token reform or some other type of superficial thing that's not going to fundamentally change the conditions. And then the money keeps flowing. Make it unprofitable. If you can't change the system fundamentally or fully separate from the system, then one of the more basic things you can say, if there's a problem, look at who's profiting and then make it unprofitable for whoever's profiting. That's a start.
Well, CyHi the Prynce has something to say about the drug game. Let's listen to his words on Barry White.
Seems so nice to me. The start of a new day. And there's no place in this world that I'd rather be than right here with midnight and you.
CyHi. It started around 1976, back when white folks was the only ones selling bricks. A little Mary Jane was the most you got arrested with. They hit you with some charges, but it really never stick. Back when my daddy was bumping earth, wind and fire, blowing earth from the earth and the wind once it hit the fire. We wasn't selling then, shouted we was just the buyers. This was back when blacks first started getting higher. Then something conspired. In the early 80s, this when Ronald Reagan introduced us to that perfect lady. If you cook it right, it's just like you're cooking rice. Now your pocket's looking right, then you bought your first Mercedes. Now people getting addicted, mamas having early babies. The streets is getting crazy, so you bought your first 380. And that's when niggas started dying every night. So go and sell some weed, cause nigga, this shit can carry life. I'm here to bury White.
The accusation that the crack epidemic, which ravaged this country's cities, was spread, was held
I'm here
from
to
a
bury
secret
White.
army linked to the CIA.
Well, for decades, it's been rumored that the United States States government was secretly sponsoring the smuggle of cocaine in the country. Steve Young reports on a new kind of cocaine called crack.
I'm here to
It's
bury
growing
white.
nationwide, especially among the young. A drug so pure and so strong, it will be called crack.
Fast forward 1990, ace the year. It started as a hustle, niggas made it a career. Now we fucking bitches, got paper up to here. Niggas killing in the 90s, thought the 80s was severe. All the leaders in the hood, they took y'all from us. Fucked around and gave them all football numbers. Like rap shows, niggas was getting booked out. Some of them folks don't give a fuck about you. Throw the book at your mama, your honor. Imagine growing up without a father. Section A, your family always gotta ride the martyr. Selling drugs was the only way I got a starter. Jacket and some Jordans is what the television taught us. And our daughters missing with no Amber Alert. Probably with some little boys with their hands up her skirt. Her mama dancing, go to work. Even got married twice, cause her first husband got indicted for that Barry White. That's why I'm here to bury White.
What makes the world go round is cocaine.
Cocaine isn't just used socially.
I'm here to bury
almost
White.
a form of currency. It's now the done thing among many rich and otherwise respectable Americans.
I'm here to bury White.
Hollywood may seem
If you're thinking about it, chances are we're talking about it. Check out our sister station, UBM Talk, by logging on to our homepage at urbanbroadcastmedia.com.
First spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. My own government.
We're back. This is Xcavate on UBM JAMZ, and that was King talking about the need to address our own government. Speaking of the government, the government,
not our government.
Yeah, well, you're right. The government, not our government. Let's consider the government's response. Obama released a statement on Michael Brown, and he sent out the state's attorney to rub some backs and pat some heads. And what do you think about the government's response?
If Obama had a son, he would have looked like Mike Brown.
That sums it up.
Well, someone asked me, because I did a whole blog post about Obama and because people were calling at the time for Obama to come to Ferguson and woo. And someone said, well, what do you expect him to do? You're so critical of the president, not our president. You're so critical of the president. What do you expect him to do? And I responded that I'd appreciate Obama to say about the black community the same thing he says about Israel, which is generally, I support and defend their right to self-defense, morally, economically, and militarily. And then I said I would like for him to walk away from the podium without taking any questions. That would be my dream response from the president. Then that would make him our president. But it's very obvious that Obama's doing pretty much the diplomatic thing and doing, pretty much damage control for his own image, because Obama, you've seen that how he's done that sensitive dance with race, where he profits very much from being a symbol of the dream's full manifestation. At the same time, his policies are in direct contradiction to the dreamer's values and ideas. So Obama's in a delicate position, but he's done it well. I mean, from a purely political science point of view, he's a master politician. But from an ideological or cultural point of view, he's been a tragedy for the black community.
Well, what do you suggest, though, that the government, what sort of response should we articulate to the government as a people? What sort of institutions or programs? I mean, we have unemployment rates that are just through the roof in our communities, especially as it relates to our young black men. What sort of institutional response do you think is required, besides what we need to do as a people, as a community? Should we rely at all? Do you think that we shouldn't even look to the government for?
Yeah, we should look to the government and study the government intensely, because the government's going to act contrary to our best interest. So we shouldn't look to the government as a source of solution. We should be studying the government as to saying, hey, what are they going to do to further subvert our community, and what can we do to counteract their efforts at subversion? And I know this might sound tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory, paranoia, but you know, I study policy. You know, I have a master's degree in public policy, and I've read government policies. I've read the state constitution, the federal constitution, and when we really look at both what is stated and then how it's applied, the one thing you can almost guarantee, any policy, no matter how well worded it is, it's going to be played out in the worst possible way. Remember hate crimes legislation? We were like, yay, they're going to have hate crimes legislation. And now brothers are the primary targets of hate crime legislation. We said RICO, oh, the RICO is going to take care of the mob, and they're coming after our community with RICO. When they came out with the out of the Hague with the genocide, anti-genocide laws, and saying that genocide is a crime against humanity and we're going to stop genocide, we're like, yay, and the Native Americans and all these global victims of genocide were dancing in the streets, and who's the first person they convict of genocide? An African. So I mean, we can go on down the list. The drug laws and the drug war. It increased drugs.
So we're talking about the failure of these policies, but we're still not getting.
The 6 policies succeeded.
Right, in the truest intent, and then the truest intent. I get it. So then again, the question remains, because that's what we're looking for here. We're hoping to offer. From within the heart of this tragedy, we're hoping to be able to dig in and offer some solutions that we can share with our community, that the people can walk away from after having listened to this program, and have some additional ideas in which they can contribute to the conversations and the actions and the movements that go forth. So then the question remains, what sort of policies would you imagine might be able to effectively bring about some sort of change?
Are you asking me about government policies?
Yeah, or if you're telling me that there aren't any, that we shouldn't look. You know, I asked you that question, whether or not should we play this game? Should we put pressure on the alderman and the mayor and
we
the
have
president,
to play this game. We absolutely should do all of that.
I'm thinking that we should play the game, so I'm wondering.
We're forced to play the game. We can't not play the game.
Right.
We have to handle their fiat currency. We have to follow their rules. They
we are
outgun
playing.
us. They
we are
outnumber
part of
us.
this game. You're right.
But yes, we should play the game more effectively. And the best way to come, because when you go in Missouri, if you allow yourself to be compartmentalized or isolated, you can't win. In a capitalist economy, in a democratic or democratic republic, constitutional republic, there's certain rules to the game. There's certain things that the people who hold power do that the people who lack power don't do. So we have to do what people who desire and want power actually do. But one of the oldest sayings in the book, but one of the most accurate, is freedom ain't free. We have to surrender some of our comforts, surrender some of what we think is our individuality and personal freedom, surrender some of the old ideas and traditions that we've grown to identify as our own. We have to be willing to have internal revolutions, internal changes, internal cultural revolutions, and how we relate to one another, and how we relate to the resources available to us, how we relate to the skills we develop. We have to do some pretty uncomfortable things. Or we can say, hey, we're going to just go get mine, do for self, try to get that promotion, try to get that car, try to move into that more affluent neighborhood, and to hell with everybody else. But then every now and then the system's going to bite you. So what we have to do on a policy level before we approach the state is we have to create the apparatus and structure and resources needed in order to say, hey, this is what we want from the government. And this is how we will reward that official if they do what we ask, and this is how we will sanction that individual or that politician or that person in a position of power if they don't do what we want them to do.
What are your thoughts on Jesse Jackson? I caught you. He said something about policy, foreign policy, that is. I think you might actually like what he had to say. Listen to Jesse here talking about foreign policy.
I was 3 years old. I came into my consciousness. My daddy was coming home from the war. Foreign policy. If he was so dumb, how'd he get over there and get back? If he didn't know foreign policy, why'd they give him a gun? And when they gave it to him, he knew which way to shoot. We know foreign policy. When you buy Honda and Toyota, that's foreign policy. That's right. Russian vodka, that's foreign policy. Panasonic and Sony, that's foreign policy. Mercedes-Benz, that's foreign policy. As a matter of fact, we came here on a foreign policy. Yeah! I know y'all in a hurry, I'm gonna leave it now.
UBM JAMZ, Xcavate, D and Michael X, Jesse Jackson on policy, foreign policy that is. I saw you scrunch up your face there. Not too many positive feelings on those.
Buying a foreign car is foreign policy. Following the instructions of an imperial army as a frontline soldier is foreign policy. I don't know if he's stupid or he's a liar. I mean, that's absurd. That was utterly absurd. I want to apologize personally to our listening audience for that, for playing that. I'm sorry. That was snuck up on me. I didn't have an opportunity to veto that.
Well, here's what he did do. He has had the ability to relate with our community, his way with words, even if they aren't so coherent or clear or intelligent, as you might say. He said something about policy.
He said nothing about policy. If anything, he further confused his audience or the community about foreign policy.
You got me. You're right.
I mean, come on. My goodness. So, well, let's get back to His Imperial Majesty Barack Hussein Obama. I think that Obama, in the face of these tragedies, Obama election has led to ballooning. It was a boon. You know who profited most from Obama's election?
Who's that?
Well, okay, not most, because we all know. Your
Zionists.
boogeyman. Your boogeyman.
Zionists are
right.
certainly
but
the
after
ones
the
that profited
boogeyman,
the most.
after
and
the
we're gonna have
boogeyman,
plenty of opportunity
right.
to talk about them. But
after your boogeyman, the right wing hate groups and the right wing talk show host, white people fell because this is the thing when you are in a position of power. You know,
why is it that you want to push the Zionists to the side, though? We saw that I think Wall Street profited a great amount, and I don't think the right wing radio hosts are a part of. I don't see them as
my problem,
board members on J.P. Morgan Chase or anything like that. So I do see a ton of Zionists controlling those.
My issue with the Zionists is, they are everything bad you say about them, but for some reason they've reached this mythological status of these supermen, like James Bond villain status. You know.
No, they just control the World Bank and the IMF, and they have a lot of power in the White House, and those little things, the Federal Reserve,
see, that's the thing. You can't really talk rationally about the various systems and pockets of power if you're saying, well, there's one boogeyman that controls everything, and no matter where you go or what you do, it's always the Zionists.
No, not one. You just asked the question of who benefited the most, and I just wanted to respond to that before you got to maybe number 2, which would be the right-wing radio
but the reason I wanted
host.
to talk about the right-wing radio
show
host is because there's a wonderful book called there's several wonderful books. One book is Yerugu. Another book is The Iceman's Inheritance. Another one is The Psychopathic Racial Personality, that basically train professionals from archaeologists to psychologists have basically profiled white folks from a cultural and historical perspective. So the white man on the couch. Even Paul Mooney did a wonderful video about, basically examining white psychology, because even though white people do their analytical studies on everybody and they send people around the world, they very seldom do in-depth studies of themselves. And even Sigmund Freud talked about it. So if you can tie these atrocities that we're suffering and these clustering of is basically when you had an uppity nigger, they had to put one in his place or get them in their place. Right. And if they couldn't get access to that particular any other nigger will do, like they did in the what's that, the Denzel Washington movie, where they was like, we had a black suspect and we're pulling you over because there was a black man who committed a crime. And he was like, well, any nigga will do. So I think into the larger psychology is when Europeans feel a level of economic, social, political insecurity, they start to lash out. And they start to lash out very violently. And white on black violence and white on white violence is not something that's appropriate to talk about. You can say black on black violence everywhere, but if you say white on white violence or white on black violence or racist violence, people start to roll their eyes. Oh, you're just making excuses. You blame the white man for everything. So I think a lot of the clustering of the atrocities have a lot to do with, you know, white folks are feeling insecure. The Muslims are coming, and the Mexicans are coming from the South, and the blacks are running the country now. You know, and they never identify these real, you know, power elite like the Zionist, or as Wise Intelligent would call them, the globe holders, the population controllers, the slave makers, the disease creators.
Or as Skipp Coon calls them on 4/28/1967. Our next cut here, the corporations are the
There is no America.
Is it okay if I
There
rhyme
is
along
no
with this?
democracy. There is only
I ain't gonna mess it up.
IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today.
See, all I care to be is what Jack said I was. So I don't give a bill about no buzz. I am about freedom. I never mind the chickens of the club. I will live and die for the cause just because. If I don't, I wonder who will. Y'all place value on your wheels and your automobiles, but never acknowledge your children's diminishing skills, or that they continue to feel all the prisons they build. My life is all God gave me to give. I want us to be free, but you would really rather I chill. While the blood of the slaughtered is watering, killing fields. You jiving and shucking, she stripping and sucking for the bills. All for the love of the bread, cheese, dough. Sell pills, we blow, let pistols go. Got coke from the country's gay crack to the Pope, and the government responds to it, just say no. I'm freedom fighting for the love you selling out on the low, and a man ain't fit to live without something he died for. I'm in the trunk with this rifle like I'm Lee Malvo. Y'all want a sambo? Well, I'm Skipp Rambo. Jordans and camo, white tees and ammo. Put the freedom in the kick snare and the sample. I'm Rambo, put the freedom in the kick snare and the sample.
Fuck it, then I'm shaft, don't have no ammo. No spook, I don't sit, I'll kick in your front door. Malcolm with a K or Mega with 4 foes. That was body severed, but we don't know what we fighting for. 5 and the 6, we bang on the wrong thing. Let's fight against the people that came and names changed. Transatlantic trips that lit the bodies hang. Gang from a tree, it's cool to ship a key. You won't fight against the system, but you're worrying about me and who I won't sign. But you gon' find, they gon' put it in the chip and embed it in your mind and all off in your spine. Confederate flags, I'm bitching because that bitch still flying. Fly. I will give you the answer, but we running out of time. Time. I ain't lying.
See, they don't wanna listen, so loud what I gotta be. Cause my people are proud of the poverty that got they son shooting guns over dollar bills. He getting money, snow or sunny, but his daughter still read at her first grade level. And she 11 years old with her nose held high to the sky, cause she got her first purse made. Yes, on her birthday, she was singing birthday sex. Let's skim right over what's showing in plain sight. Looking the other way, but knowing it ain't right. Like over 50 shots, now Shine Bell gone, or a flashbang thrown in a little girl's home. Ayanna Jones, who? Ayanna Jones. One shot to the dome, she was 7 years old, it's a shame. Imagine being daddy one day to putting your baby girl in the grave. Something need to change, this ain't a game. If you playing to the man, you be slaving to the day you laying face up in the casket. With credit card sharks still asking if they could put your name on some plastic. Man, it's a war going on outside, no one is safe from. Heavy as the darkest spark, I'ma create one. Cause a little light might be enough to make some straight from the ways of the slave. The pain of the hunger is enough to make a sane man put it to your brain for some money and a chain. And I don't really blame him, cause if you in the game screaming money and a thing, you resemble a fillet. A lot of people saying that I'm preaching to the death. Man, get that shit a rest. I'm going to the breath, won't come out of nigga chest. They in it for the checks. I'm in it cause I wanna be remembered as a vet. Luke Brazi.
Man, we're back. UPM JAMZ, Xcavate with D and Michael X, and that was just Skipp Coon, Luca Brazi, and David Banner with 4/28/1967. An amazing cut. I'm really interested in having those brothers on the show. I'm sure we can get them on.
and I can battle some. You know, I
still
write
flowing?
battle
You
rhymes.
still flowing?
No, but I do.
You write your poetry though, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't seen you on the scene. You know,
nah.
There's a really happening scene.
I
here
just
in
went
Chicago.
there
I'm
to
surprised I haven't seen you on the scene. What is that about?
To get
Are
a woman.
you shy now?
No, I was just there for the ladies, and I met my wife at a poetry reading, so I have no more incentive to go to poetry readings.
Yeah, but I'm really excited about the show.
What, we're done? Didn't we answer all the questions of the black community?
Well, we didn't.
We
will be getting questions later. We're going to have a call in.
What? We got to do more shows.
We
answered all the questions, solved all the problems. Get to work, people.
We got a long way to go.
Oh, I thought we'd walk out the studio and see.
No, we're just starting. We're just starting.
God.
We're trying to build a base here, and I think we're off to a good start. I'm excited about. How do you feel about the first show?
This is like the first show, if you count the YouTube.
Yeah, the video version. So first show.
I
How
think
you
we
feel
can
about radio?
tighten it up.
Yeah, we can certainly tighten it up, but
all I listen to is radio. So I'm old school. All y'all pre-program everything. Y'all MP3 and all that mess, and you dictate everything.
I listen to a little radio.
What's your
Not
favorite,
a lot.
What's your favorite radio station?
To tell the truth, I know you're
gonna.
No, I'll tell you. I know you're gonna probably rag me for it, but it's NPR.
Really?
Yeah, it's NPR.
Yeah, that's shameful.
You know, like
they have that
our
one black militant audience just tuned off.
But I gotta be honest. I mean, I'm a little bit, yeah. All right.
What about AM 11?
I don't listen to too much radio.
Gosh,
I don't listen too much. But I think we can do good on it, so we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Just thank you for listening. Looking forward to
next week, UBM Jams, Xcavate with D and Michael X. We'll see you next week. Peace, power, and love.
I want the blue skies and mile high clubs and getting by. Watch the blimp in the sky that read the world is mine. Fine dining, yo, I'm lamping out in Mexico. Location undisclosed, playing dominoes. I want my toes painted fresh, new sundress, new Timbs, new vest, and a Smith & West. I want the best weed, no stems, no seeds. Cook up a feast, tell my folks to come and eat. Breaking bread, staying well fed. I want the diamond life. Trife niggas out my eyesight. I'd invite you all to come along, but you busy, screw faced on. Yo, it's cool, I got love for you too. Got enough for you too. You choose to play the shade. I prefer to get paid, popular like lemonade. I want it all, new socks and drawers. And I ain't gotta take shit from none of y'all. I want the power, peace, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. It's the master plan. Yeah, I want the power, peace, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. It's the master plan. I want the power, peace, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. It's the master plan. Yeah, I want the power, peace, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. It's the master plan. I want a man that I could laugh with, stack cash with, dip out on the whim just to ride with the kid. Want a live nigga, seen shit, know where he been. Who understand the power that he holding within. The flyers, look me in my eyes when we speaking. Respect me as his equal, don't mind checking his ego. Soft touch with a stronghold, hard to say no to him. Smile sweet, dimple deep, kinda sexy. Working man hands, know where and when to touch me. Vex me when he get in this mood. He type rude with a boss man attitude. Walking how he talking to. King phenomenal, doing what he gotta do. Stoic, poetic in his motions. He regal, reflecting everything that he need. That's how a queen do. I'm trying to ride with you, get live with you, be fly with you, be the pride. I want the power, peace, knowledge, wisdom, understanding.
UBM Jams plays the best hip hop and R&B from the past 30 years.
I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. Maybach music. I cut my teeth on wedding rings in the movies. And I'm not proud of my address. In a torn up